What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Screening Room podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing the original Toy Story film in celebration of Toy Story 5 releasing in theaters this week. We actually just posted a review video of Toy Story 5 if you want to go check that out. But today, we're going to be doing our longer form podcast episode on the original film. I'm joined, as always, by my co host, Mike, for this one.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
So Mike, why don't you hit it out with your initial thoughts on the film?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought John Lasseter did a great job directing Toy Story 1. For me, I actually remembered this was better than I remembered. I always thought that the voice acting and then the animation were, not as good compared to the newer ones, obviously, but they're better than I remembered, honestly. And I actually really liked both Tom Hanks and Tim Allen's performances in this film. I thought they did a great job with that. And I liked some of the smaller roles in this as well. I completely forgot for how it was just mainly those two for most of the movie. I thought it had a lot of funny jokes throughout the film, but it also touched on a lot of serious aspects too, like what happens when somebody grows up, or where Buzz faces like an existential crisis when he realizes that he is a toy. I thought it handled a lot of more serious moments with more comedic ones, and I thought it balanced out really well as telling a very interesting story.
Yeah, no, I agree. And actually, I wrote this in my letterboxd review, but this might be a hot take. But not only do I think that the animation has held up pretty well given when it was made, but also there's part
Yeah,
of me that low key kind of prefers the older animation style over, like, say what we got in like Toy Story 4 and 5. Like there's a weird charm to it, I guess.
yeah,
I don't know if it's like, I grew up this was, one of our like DVDs that we always had in rotation when I was really little, so I've watched it a gazillion times, so maybe it's, a bit of the nostalgia talking, but yeah, I mean, not to say that I don't like the animation style in the newer movies, because I definitely do, and it looks really clean. But I don't know. There's just like a charm to, I think, the Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 animation. And yeah, as for the story, I think, like you said, it's really good at mixing these like complex ideas, like like Buzz going through an existential crisis, Woody being afraid that he's going to get replaced, but also balancing it out with some really humorous bits. And I think Tim Allen and Tom Hanks really riffed off each other really well. Um, and I think it just makes for like a really good movie. And I think all the other toys too. I think in this movie, more than any other, really, they all the like main Andy's toys get like a good amount of screen presence and like character building. I think Mr.
yeah,
Potato Head is really good in particular. I love Ham.
yeah,
He's great.
yeah. Slinky was also really good too. I always
Yeah.
got a kick out of Slinky and Rex too.
Yeah. And I think the other cool thing is like they do a really good job. I mean, it's kind of like Pixar's specialty. Like they're making movies for kids, but then they put enough stuff in there to where like adults could like pick up on stuff that, like, nobody else would, or like a kid wouldn't necessarily. So like the thing that immediately stands out to me is like in the beginning when Woody's holding the staff meeting and
Yeah,
Slinky's like glazing Woody, and then Potato Head takes off his mouth
yeah.
and and places it near his
Puts it on his back end. Yeah,
near his rear. I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny.
yeah,
There's some other bits in
yeah.
there too. Like there's like some Star
The
Wars references
the
in there. Um,
Yeah, there's that. There's some GI Joe references in this too.
yeah.
I'll get back to that later on in the trivia. And like you mentioned earlier with like the more like older jokes, there's the preschool toys line, which is always pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um,
The
Yeah,
word I'm searching
but
for,
it's
I can't say.
I can't say because there's preschool toys present. That's always funny to
Yeah.
me. Um, and I think the design of each character is really fun because it really like matches the aesthetic of the movie with it being like this is the kid who over the years has grown up and more so in the later movies. But that each of the toys feels like they're your own they're their own unique character with Woody being a cowboy, Buzz being introduced as the futuristic space ranger, which is kind of like a nod to that Andy's growing up and that maybe his interests are changing from Woody, who's more of like a quote unquote like outdated like time period and toy. Then you got Rex there too, who's kind of like just from a different section of like the of like a play style. Same with Mr. Potato Head. You have all of them in there just as you would see like with someone like Andy's age and he's getting older, having all these different toys with these very different personalities throughout the film. And then it really like contrasts when we hop over into Sid's room with all of his toys too, and we see that's kind of like a hodgepodge of just everything that's been going on with with his sister's toys and the kits he made, and it kind of shows like the juxtaposition onto how these toys can be treated as well, like with Andy taking such good care of his and with Sid basically just destroying his. Um, and it just
Yeah,
kind of shows the level of care that Andy has for these toys and why they want to go back to them.
I remember I was going through the Blu-ray extras, um and there was a video. It was an interview or something. I think it might have even been like a retrospective, like but it was John Lasseter talking about how he and like some of the other people working on the film almost like empathized, or not, maybe empathize isn't the right word, but like maybe identified with Sid to some extent more so than Andy, because I guess, they kind of they were like reminiscing over like how they would kind of deconstruct toys or, play rough or whatever with their toys, and how Sid's almost like an extreme commentary on that almost. Because
Yeah,
like Sid is obviously taking it to an unrealistic level. I mean, he's literally blowing stuff up in his backyard.
yeah,
But I don't know. I think that's like a really there's like an interesting dynamic there, or like duality between how Sid treats the toys and how Andy treats the toys. That's I think it's really interesting. And honestly, like for
yeah.
I'm assuming this movie's rated G, right? I I
G or PG, I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm pretty sure it's
Correct us in
G.
the comments if we're wrong. Yeah,
Yeah, because I think Toy Story 5 is the first one that was rated PG. But anyway, I mean, regardless, I think I remember being like low key kind of scared of Sid when I was younger, like no
yeah,
matter how many times I had seen it, because he's just like, I mean, obviously down to like the character design, but I mean,
yeah,
he's straight up just like blowing stuff up. It's like a little
yeah,
unnerving, but
yeah.
I think
And
he
about
serves
the
as a good
character
villain.
design too.
Yeah.
He does, yeah. And about the character design too, his design and his model is actually very similar to the one they used for Andy. So it kind of adds to that dark reflection, that's been shown throughout the movie with Sid being like the opposite version of Andy. And I thought that was like something that might have been unintentional, but that it really held up with the animation because obviously they had to cut corners with it just because, it was like 1995 and the computer animation for that wasn't quite as advanced. Like all the kids at Andy's party are all just copies of him,
I was gonna
which
say,
was
yeah.
fun to see. But I think that might have accidentally really helped along with the point you were just talking about on how Sid is kind of every toy's worst nightmare,
Yeah.
while Andy can be what every toy dreams of having, is having a kid that really cares about them. And
Right.
that's why it's so special to see Woody start to kind of get jealous of Buzz because Andy's maybe he found a new favorite toy. Although, spoilers alert for anyone who hasn't watched the film. If you haven't watched the film, obviously please go back and watch it. But kind of makes room for one more instead of just having a favorite, which I think is something that's really cool to see throughout like this story, at least with the first three with Andy, that he's always found room for more toys instead of playing favorites.
Right, and I think it's also really interesting because Woody and Buzz, like you said earlier, are so different. Like in terms of like the toy them, one is an old cowboy doll, and the other is this like Swiss Army knife of a space toy who can do all these crazy
Yeah,
things. But in Andy's eyes, he sees them as equals. Um, it's not just like Woody's tossed to the side once Buzz Lightyear shows up. You know what I mean? Like, or even
yeah,
we see it more so in later movies, but um, Toy Story 3 especially comes to mind. But like even the other toys besides Woody and Buzz, he still makes like room for like Ham, for example. He's
yeah,
always the bad guy, like Doctor Evil, Doctor Porkchop or something like that.
yeah, yeah. Not
Um,
that, not Doctor Evil.
yeah, no, not no.
No, totally different.
Uh,
Um, but yeah,
but yeah,
but
I don't know. I just
yeah,
think I think that's kind of interesting how it can show that like not only can you have like you don't have to necessarily play favorites, but you know they can be totally different types of
included.
toys and still
Yeah,
have like the same level of like emotional weight in Andy's eyes. You know what I mean?
yeah. And I think that's what kind of like makes the last section, like the third act of the movie, really special. As we're getting closer to the ending of the movie, there's the bit where Buzz and Woody are about to be left behind when when Andy and his family are moving out. Um, and I always thought that was a really cool scene. It really added the tension to it. Just because throughout the film they were trying to get back to Andy and they're like so close. I always thought that it was kind of a cool thing to see, and it's iconic, especially to the flying scene with To Infinity and Beyond. But it really kind of solidifies that throughout the rest of these movies too. That at that point, Buzz and Woody are good friends, and that they're a team, and that they've worked out their differences throughout the second act, and they both have this same unifying goal of to make Andy have a great childhood and to continue that on for any other kid they can help. And I thought that third act really solidified that for me. And it shows kind of the heart of the franchise too, that they're trying to just make a kid happy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I genuinely think that there is an argument for Toy Story having like one of the best endings in film history, even because, I mean, like
Yeah,
you said, I mean, obviously, any good ending, you're building up to it from the get go, but as soon as they're like Woody and Buzz are like kidnapped and it's all about trying to get back to Andy. Obviously, like Woody, at least initially, is more interested in that than Buzz. But when it keeps cutting back to Andy, even before they actually move, like as they're packing, but the toys are still missing, he's constantly like, I couldn't find Buzz. Mom, do you think we'll find him? Blah, blah, blah. And it really adds like more tension as the whole like Sid stuff like kind of climaxes. And then you get
yeah,
to the point where they kind of earn the suspension of disbelief during the whole like RC sequence. Like, like sure,
yeah,
no humans are seeing these toys just rocket through the street. Sure, Buzz can magically fly. That makes sense, But like they earn
yeah,
that suspension of disbelief. They, you can buy into it. And I think
yeah,
that's the mark of like some really good filmmaking. So I
yeah.
genuinely do think
It
it's one of the best ending sequences ever, really.
Yeah. And it really takes the fact of the rule of cool, but it also makes it like apply in a way that you would see that realistically being the best way to end that movie. And I think it is, honestly. Just to build off what you're saying, yeah, it's really just an iconic staple, not only for Disney or Pixar or any other animation studio, but for just film in general and the 90s itself.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um I just think the movie in general is just I think it's just a masterpiece in terms of like filmmaking and narrative structure. I really don't think
Yeah.
you can beat it. There's which is it's weird saying that about I'm assuming a G-rated, you know, 100
Yeah,
100-minute movie, probably something like that. Like, I don't
yeah,
know, but not only was it like technically innovative, which I could talk about later. I mean, it's just what it did for the animation landscape in general. That alone, earns it a
yeah,
spot in like the Film Hall of Fame. But like, not only is it a great kind of tech demo, like showing what was now possible in the animation realm, but is also just like a really good story. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of like Star Wars in a way where like, yeah, they're debuting all these like fancy new effects, but like this underlying story is also like really good, which just kind of elevates both elements, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But with that in mind, I don't want to keep rambling. Unless you had anything to add, do you want to get into some trivia and fun facts?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I got into the trivia, I did manage to find both the budget and the initial box office of the film. And the budget for this was about, $30 million, and the box office for it initially was $363 million. So obviously made its money back. It was, considered a hit. And it was also the first ever computer animated motion picture and the first animated film nominated by the Academy for Best Screenplay, both original and adapted screenplay. So it has that going for it too, in just the factor of its timelessness.
I didn't even know it was
Um,
possible to get the same script nominated for both adapted and original. I don't know how that would work. That's
it
interesting.
was nominated for Best Screenplay, yeah, for both of the the first ever animated film nominated for Best Screenplay, including adapted or
Oh,
original
I
screenplay.
see what you're saying. Okay. I was gonna say I don't know how
Yeah,
you could get nominated for both. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
no, just it was just the first animated film to have that happen.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, and Randy Newman, the singer of the song "You Got a Friend in Me," wrote that in one day. Um, just the amount of talent in that alone, because we didn't even discuss the score and the soundtrack, which I think is instantly, as soon as I hear the first couple notes, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's Toy Story.
Yep. You just
Um,
hear the do
so
do
it's
do
got that
do
going for it.
do. Yeah.
Yep, and you're like, I know what this is. And this was a fun thing to find out too. But John Lasseter revealed that both Woody and Buzz were inspired by some of his own toys he had as a kid. Woody was inspired by a pull string Casper doll he had, and Buzz was inspired by one of his favorite GI Joes, which when he was a kid were considered the new kid on the block in terms of like the fancy toy innovations. So it's fun to see that not only were these toys, you know, beloved in fiction, but they're based off of real life toys that, had that emotional connection to John Lasseter.
I was gonna say, you look at any pictures of John Lasseter's like various offices throughout the years, like they are literally just full of bookshelves end to end with just all sorts of toys. Like he is a very big collector, not only of like toys based off his movies, but just like toys in general. Which kind of bled into the character of Al in the second one, which I'm not really gonna talk about here,
Yeah.
but I know like that character specifically was based a lot on John Lasseter's own like personal habits. So I think that's
Mm.
pretty interesting. But I guess like the main point here is that like it's cool seeing. I think they made the right call in terms of like the story that they chose because everyone, especially Lasseter, was like clearly very invested in that uh topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you have any other facts, or was that about it?
That was all I had, and I'm ready to give my formal review.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like I said, I think it's a perfect movie. It first feature length computer animated movie, and I think the story is just so timeless. I the fact that it still stands the test of time, like 30 some years later, I think you can't give it anything but a 10 out of 10. So that's my verdict. I'm
Yeah.
giving it a 10.
Yeah, same here. I gave it a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5. And for pretty much the same reasons, because I haven't watched this movie in a long time. And I got to tell you, it was so nice finally getting to sit down and rewatch this because, again, maybe this is the nostalgia talking, but if you want to watch a movie that really summarizes that childhood feeling of nostalgia and just pure joy, this is the film for that because it's got everything you need. It's got the laughs, it's got more serious moments, but it's also got a lot of heart with it. And I think that's something that you don't always see in everything when it comes to like kids movies, because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, it's made for kids, but the Toy Story, like this one, it was really made for everybody in all ages. And I think this is a movie that has stood the test of time since it came out, and I think has only gotten better since it came out.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say like the fact it's like I said, the fact that it was still able to like hold up and not just in terms of the actual animation itself, but in terms of the narrative, you know, 30 something years later, I think that's just the mark of, you know, incredible filmmaking all around. So yeah, I that means overall then, if we're both giving it a 10 out of 10, that makes this really easy. This joins our screening room 10 out of 10 club, which I think what does that consist of right now? It's isn't it Godfather, Hail Mary. Is there anything else? I'm trying to remember.
And I feel like there is. If there's any longtime listeners, please let us know. I just don't happen to have my notebook on hand at the moment. I have all of our stuff recorded, but
Yeah.
I just don't happen to have it on with us. So if you happen to know any answers, please let us know in the comments.
But yeah, no.
But
With that all said, if I'm gonna leave a little teaser here for our next episode.
That is where you've always been wrong about me, Lex. I'm as human as anyone.
And that is gonna about wrap it up for this one. Did you have any last minute things you wanted to mention before I conclude it?
I'm all set.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for watching as always. Tune back in next week for our next episode. We'll also probably have a separate Supergirl review, I'm assuming, sometimes next week, so stay tuned for that. But with that all said, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.